Now, thank you very much, Jerry. And I've seen many familiar faces around here. Ruth was definitely a great delight. And Jane, and there's another gentleman that I'd like to acknowledge. We have Rob Hughes. Is Rob Hughes in the audience today? All right, good. Sorry. Rob and I used to work in this company called Young and Rubicam when we were young then. That was back in the 1998, I guess, yeah. So just like to acknowledge that, yeah. Now, we have a very short time, about 30 minutes, to share about the stories of Tencent today. Despite the fact that you hear about numbers, we just in fact released our earnings 2 days ago. Numbers are just numbers, and in fact, when I met your executive chairman just now, he was saying that there's so much that companies such as Dent find it very difficult to follow. But I guess my answer to that is that every single industry do have their very different drivers. When one of the previous Olympians of swimmers, he won the Olympics gold medalist, the rules was that because he was focusing on the winning rather than focusing on other winners. So I'm sure companies such as Dan would definitely find your path towards achieving your excellence in the days to come. Now today I'm here, in fact Jerry and I, we kind of brew this moment for 8 months. 8 months ago, when I was at Cairns, Jerry then said that, that's why I think we should do this. I said, well, I think so, because the industry definitely needed more collaborations between tech companies such as ourselves and, of course, with agency partners that are increasingly moving their focus as well as their strategic imperatives towards the world of technology. And with that relevance, I'm highly referring to this concept called marketing technology. So today, Jerry has given me a task to kind of frighten the living daylights out of everybody. And the reason for that is because he then put Tencent and Dan on the front page of that Cannes publication more than a year ago. What a price to pay for content placement, right? Now, during the past 2 years, my team and I, we have received many speaking engagements from around the world. And as you can see from here, most of such invitations revolve around topics such as technology disruptions with key opinion leaders everywhere. And you kind of can group them into the space of academia, business leaders, clients, supply chain management, and of course, even policymakers such as government. Now, perhaps the highest highlights of that tour of duty, if you like, the grand tour of duty over the years, has been our appearance to make a keynote speech at IMF, International Monetary Fund. During that beautiful days in Washington, D.C., 2 keynote speakers were invited. One was a gentleman that founded a company that was involved in cryptocurrency, and the other invitation was to my good self, representing China and Tencent. And the world wanted to find out from us, how did a company such as Tencent was involved in kind of digitalizing the GDPs of one of the largest countries in the world. IMF represented by 189 countries, with central bankers being the key memberships and all that. So people were concerned, how would GDP be going forward? And so many questions were raised, largely driven by the fact that all the key factors of productions, if you study economies, factors of productions were actually largely going through the faithful process of being digitalized, if we so to speak. So if I may introduce quickly evidence, fact number 1. Disruption doesn't just happen to the likes of the industry of agencies. So we are not the enemies, despite the fact whatever you hear out there. In fact, the more on the downside is that the more I learn about disruptions, the more my team and I try to learn from industry investment bankers' reports, and even with data sets that we produce within the Tencent company, the more I learn about the drivers of disruptions, and the more fearful, the more humble, and the more respectful I become with this big I don't even know how we call it, in effect, when the respectable Stephen Hawking that passed away a week ago, he himself even thought about the key drivers of disruptions going forward was going to be artificial intelligence, and even he himself wasn't very sure whether this Pandora box that was being opened up by tech guys was going to be a contribution towards humanity, or was it going to be a larger burden that humanity has never seen. So I guess what we are talking about today is that we have entered the stage, the eras of Industrial Revolution 4.0. I know that all of us in the world of communication, we like to coin up concepts, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, but do hear me out. This is different. This is it. This is different because this is so different because the velocity of it, the depth of it, the breadth of it, and more importantly, the systemic impact that these things has created is almost affecting all sorts of industries that we are talking about. Last year in December, I was invited by one of the largest law firms in the UK. Even lawyers today are so worried about being disrupted because they have things like law tech. The doctors in China are worried about being disrupted because whatever technology, whatever visual recognitions, whatever so-called supercomputer-driven algorithm that companies such as Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, Google, you name it, these are the guys that coming up with things that would make MRI seems obsolete in the past. So, in a nutshell, I think, folks, I think we are in this together. Companies like Tencent, I saw Google's and Facebook on the chart, but we are in this together because we are certainly not spared from this as well. And today, if I may, I would actually like to take a few moments to talk about the stories of how Tencent has been dancing with the concepts of disruptions over the past 2 decades, and hopefully provide some inspirations to our journey moving forward together. We don't serve one another. The only reasons our existence is actually to serve the needs of the consumer. And in fact, with technology advancing so forward-looking, and the needs of the consumer today is no longer our concern. We are expected to bring value to predict what might be the inherent, what might be the future needs of the consumers. I think that's what value creations out of synergies of contextual technology company with a marketing specialist such as your good self could bring to the table. Now, let me briefly touch on some basic facts about Tencent. A lot of times when I do such things, I'm very worried that people might think that we kind of look a bit arrogant and all that, but the fact is not there. Number does shows that we are a market cap with more than $500 billion US, and numbers does show us that today we are the 5th largest publicly listed companies in the world, and well, to compress the so-called the growth evolution a little bit, let's start with back in 1999. So back in 1999, this company, we started with a product called QQ, and that was the very first largest mega product that this company has invented. So WeChat is known, it kind of created its own fame and affinity around the world. Is actually, you don't have a lot of brands that actually outperform the mother brand. So Tencent was a corporate brand, WeChat was a mega brand. Now the mega brand is actually shining larger than the corporate brand. So WeChat has actually built a massive online world, online fraternity, online community, online platform that covers virtually every single individual in China today. Now that 20 years of crusade, which I was privileged and fortunate to be participating in about 13 years of it. This online lifestyle, if I may, online lifestyle in China is as real as it could be because it has taken a live form of itself and organically expanded into such a gigantic digital ecosystem. I like to believe that Tencent was one of the great contributions in that sense. Now, the chart that you see here, it might look complicated, but essentially, it is actually not that difficult. Essentially, Tencent today, we only focus on 2 key things, what we call being a connector and content, being a connector and content. So as a connector, Tencent now provides a wide range of services to almost every single aspect of online life of the Chinese digital lifestyles. And the aspiration has always been pretty straightforward. We aspired from the day one we were established to connect people with people and eventually with every single thing that we are seeing. If we were to read the book from Industrial Revolution, you will see that by the year 2025, which is not very far from here today, there are numbers that suggest that human beings will be far more connected by any sort of a range of measurements we can ever imagine. But then the prediction is that you're going to have the very first body implanted mobile phone. And you're going to have the very first, clothing where it will be connected onto the internet. And you're going to have the very first board member that will be represented by artificial intelligence-driven robots. So think about all these things, and I always feel that 2025 is not really that far away from today. That is scary. Now, as a content provider, what was more crucial was actually to help to cultivate, to nurture, to inculcate that macro environment where great content could fulfill the tangible, emotional, and even spiritual needs of the Chinese netizen. So all sounds very, very big words, but if you have like a billion users, you literally have to perhaps think larger than life, and hopefully then everybody's needs could be met in that sense. Now, here's a key. Many actually thought that the current stature, the current positions of Tencent, it was achieved via many so-called our formidable competitive position was achieved by us disrupting many others along the way. But not many realize that the story of Tencent, the values of it lies within the key whereby during the formative years of our legacy, we were actually the primary targets for way too many predators, unicorns, that could have actually ended our path towards excellence. I mean, I remember when I joined a company, we have 2,000 people, and we were a big fat elephant. But then your mentality was probably just primary school, elementary school, but then you're big. And it's an easy target for any unicorns to actually go after you. So the real worth of the Tencent story that's worth sharing is not because we have always been a disruptor, but rather it unveils a legacy of how we have stood the test of time posed by various disruptions. And along the way, we learned, we got hurt, and then we grew. Now, if you were to look at this chart, you might not have realized that over the past decades, we faced many moments of sudden death as we built our company from scratch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when the team and I, when we wrote this out, this is original content produced by our team, then we were kind of a shock. Because each and every one of these moments of disruptions was tectonic in nature. It could have been a disaster to the entire operation. Now, let me quickly take you through. I'm going to just quickly kind of do a HBS, Harvard Business School review on each of the very cases. Time is an accent, so I cannot go into depth. But hopefully the insight stories and the significance could be inspiration to us here today. Start with the battlegrounds of microblogs, disruptions of social network. Now, that significance lies in the fact that it was during the formative years of social media in China. The world was introduced to social media. The Yahoos of the world started it, but it was great companies such as Twitter that actually liberalized communication, connections between everybody in the world. Now, during our versions of social media evolution, this was a time where China's internet history, where eyeball economy was the only known or the single largest crucial business model for growth in the industry. So Tencent was very much lagging behind when a brand called Xinlang Weibo, which today is still very publicly listed in the US and doing pretty well in China. And they have actually quickly jumped way ahead of the curve. So they became a monopoly by that sense. So we came in like a year later. So it is entirely possible that today history would have recorded Xinlang Weibo's victory over Tencent Weibo in this battleground. Now, people that actually understood the dynamics within a larger schemes of social ecosystem, if you like, it wasn't just about social media, would recognize that Tencent, despite the fact that Tencent was disadvantaged within the world of Weibo war, but Tencent actually triumphed in the end, as this was the time where WeChat was developed secretly as a curveball strategy within the social network battleground. Now, the next battlefield that I'd like to talk about at a very superficial level is called the battlefields of 3Q, 3Q 大战. Now, for those of us who are familiar or live in China, you realize that this was one of the most crucial masterclass industry case study, not even within the world of internet, but within the world of legal field as well. Many would, when you think back, many would think that this was a public relations class warfare story between a giant company then, such as Tencent, towards a startup company called Sanliuling 360. But in reality, the danger that lurks beneath the surface was truly deadly. What do I mean by that? See, this startup company was actually, their value creation lies in the fact that they were selling antivirus program. And out of a sudden, suddenly when we woke up one fine day, we realized that all Tencent users that installed this program were unknowingly granting permissions to this program to deactivate QQ, deactivate our programs that resides in the user's computer. So think about this. Your competitor suddenly send in the stuff that comes into your finance department, into your account management department, and then start taking over your company. Now, all this was done brilliantly under the pretext of cyber security, as this startup had actually smartly positioned itself as a policeman of the internet industry. Overnight, we discovered that we were losing millions of users. And bearing in mind that this happened during the era where the laws pertaining to cybersecurity and also the internet industry wasn't really kindly put in place as well. And to make things worse, remember I talked about we are the big fat elements, the Yao Ming size, and we had to do something so stupid. So we came out the next day very angrily telling everybody, you know what, you like her, you don't like me. You install her, you cannot install me. So we make a very stupid and a hasty mistake by asking our user to make a choice. You either have us or you have the other side. Now, this decision of ours naturally turned into a huge fiasco, if you like, until the authority had to step in. And we realized that out of a sudden, we don't have any friends in the industry. And we were already that big. The concept of BAT was already established. So we were that big. And nobody wanted us. Nobody liked us. It could have been a disaster for a company called Tencent. And the reason for that, apparently, was simply when the very first 10 years of our growth, we were seen as a company that was very arrogant. We monopolize everything, every sub-industry within the larger sector. So there was this saying that if Tencent kind of zero in, bullseye into certain things like high-tech, like fintech, like whatever things, everybody will be swept away because we are seen like that monopoly that we wanted to be gigantic in every way. So I think the learning from that 3Q battlefield was a huge wake-up call for the leaderships of the company, and which then subsequently led us into sincerely, earnestly launching this, what we call the open platform strategy in the country. And that was one of the most strategically correct corporate decisions that we have made in decades. Now, what about this thing called the battlefield of mobility? This was another classic case study. Today, we know that China is the largest mobile phone market in the world, and while more than 97% of internet users in China uses mobile devices to go online. But 97% of a billion, populations. But such tipping point only happened within like 5 to 6 years. Back in 2011, Tencent as a company was already an emerging market leader in all sorts of fields, whether you call it social gaming, you call it media, you call it social network, and even the world of entertainment. So we were leaders within those fields, if you like. But the problem was this: those days, all our users, almost more than 70-80% of our users, were all desktop bound. How did we manage to architect a massive product transformation strategy for the migrations of our core users from desktop over to mobile phones? And more importantly, how did we even know that this was going to be killing us? How did we know that this was going to be the critical moment, the so-called the dawning edge of a quantum tipping point, if you like? How do we even know that? Well, as I said, there are many, you almost, if you're not careful, you almost become the Kodak moments before you know that you were Kodak. And the reason for that is simply because, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, leadership has got penalties, because we are very happily standing before the audience receiving awards where things goes right, and all of us who are sincere to ourselves, we know that a lot of times, Jeff has told me that sometimes success doesn't really correlate directly to management. So when you are doing well, you receive awards. But when you're not doing well, obviously, you ought to take the floor. You ought to take the fall. So companies doesn't exist anymore because the leadership of the company did not see such things coming. What about this last thing called the battlefield of online video? This involved directly myself. I was the president of China's Tencent online media group for 11 years. When I was recruited by Pony, and online media group was billing 2个亿, means 200 million renminbi. 200 million renminbi. Within 10 years, my team and I, we built it to 500个亿, 50 billion growth. How did we manage to do that? During my tenure, one of the most strategically correct decisions where I stood my spine up against the chairman of the company was to prevent the company from jettisoning the video business from our group. It was a right decision because video was burning our pants off. In our company, when we talk about burning our pants off, we are not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. We are not talking about billions of dollars. We spend 20 billion renminbi every year just to allow the video business to be alive. And we were losing our pants off. So how do you justify? So there was one fine day, out of a sudden, I was given the privilege to present a story to the board, to Tencent board. Very happily, I thought, well, maybe the board really wanted to hear how did we do well, and this and that. Apparently not. The people were concerned, why are you losing your pants off? What is your largest price tickets and all that? And I'm going to share with you the stories of how we managed to convince the board and all that. Now, is really, really pleasing to hear today Tencent Video is bringing in more than 20 billion renminbi in our advertising revenue. And at the same time, we managed to grow followers of franchise of subscription base of more than 60 million people. There are more than 60 million people, perhaps about 10 or 12 size of Singapore's population, that are paying us every month to subscribe, to watch our video. So how do you do that? How did Tencent Video was not even a business group, it was just a department ran by a couple of hundreds people. How did we do that? And the chairman didn't want to sell us once. They wanted to sell us once, they wanted to sell us twice, they wanted to sell us 3 times. So 3 times for the past 5 years, and we managed to stop that. There's a lot of learning over there. have we not stood firm in our belief and executed our strategic plan? And obviously, the team stood up, and then we delivered our goods. And the online media group of Tencent today would not be where it is today, simply because today, the larger amount of traffic over the internet the eyeballs has all gone audiovisuals. Nobody look at desktop, nobody just look at stream of text and photos. It's all eyeballs into videos. So having not done that, we'll be gone. So there'll be no online media group within the Tencent company. Now, what about the battlegrounds of mobile payment? Think about it. And the world knows about digital payments, and largely, I think we're very thankful for Jack Ma in Alibaba that has spent their entire life creating a mobile payment culture in China. That mobile payment culture today in China is like 11 to 12 times larger than the entire payment system in the United States. Now, when Tencent discovered that we have a strategy to circumvent our competitor from becoming so-called a soulless monopoly within that digital payments sector. Why was it important to us, and how did we manage to do that? We are proud to say that today, only 5 years, by putting our focus, our diligent effort into the mobile payment, we have captured close to 40% of the entire digital mobile payment. It was from 0 to 40% within 4 or 5 years. Isn't that disrupting? So the idea wasn't just about getting into the market and then be a market leader. The idea was, how do you prevent these subsectors of the market from encroaching your other values in other sectors? I think that's what we have learned. And finally, the story can go on and on. What about the battlegrounds of the cloud computing, which is ongoing right now? And I don't even know what might be the next tectonic nature kind of disruptions that might be coming through our world. Well, I can go on and on with these stories. I guess I better stop. I guess after looking through these charts, the real questions to real leaderships, to the like-minded professionals like ourselves, we came from the same background. My career started in McCann Erickson. I was lucky to be recruited by Young and Rubicam used to be. And then subsequently, I went to BBDO. I went to Publicis before I decided that perhaps tech in China was something that I wanted to invest my life. It was my life, and there was no regret then. Now, the real question that really affirms us is this: does all these things that we have shared for the past 20 minutes, does it reaffirm the old maxim whereby fatal strategic flows can only be recognized as hindsight? And that's the million-dollar questions. And I'm sure you know that probably. The answer, obviously, to this is no. Otherwise, why would we have conference, right? Now, in our observations, in our belief, which, again, we are just 19 to 20 years old company, we like to believe that fundamentally, the real values of leaderships going forward in a world whereby disruption is supposed to be a new normal. Now, it has to do, the qualities of leaderships in a world of new normal, it has to do with our abilities, our foresight abilities to uncover the patterns, not even answer, the patterns of solutions to such questions. How do we know when a disruption was about to take place? Even if you knew that there was a tsunami coming, if you knew that there was a train coming from the end of the tunnel, how do you know your solution was going to be good enough, was going to be optimally enough to address that solution? And obviously, finally, we are leaders. How do you know on the longer run if this thing called about building a disruptive, free leadership operating culture within our company? I think these are the three questions that it would last us a long time to keep deliberating. Now, quickly, let's take a look at some of the observations that we have learned from all the various types of the 5 or 6 disruptions exercise that we have gone through in the past. First question, how do we know when the disruption was about to take place? And the answer is, you don't. Now, then we move on to the next question. Well, I mean, to be honest, come on, guys. Nothing can really predict the true future with 100% certainty. But however, I think what we have learned, honestly, was that we could certainly be more well prepared. And this is what we have been doing. Now, the last 10 or 12 years or so, I kind of worked with my team, and they are professors from Harvard Business School that wanted to do a case study on us. We kind of see that there are some characteristics within the Tencent leadership team which I have not spoken in the public before, and I'd like to just share with you today. And I believe, my team and we believe that such characteristics might be the reasons, one of the reasons that help us weather the downfall of those disruptions. Now, very quickly, the first characteristics of this company called Tencent is a very strong sense of insecurity. Starting from Pony Ma, Martin, everybody. We are the people that are very worried. Ayo, what happened? Ayo, tomorrow how? Ayo, how? Ayo, this number dropped already. Ayo, how? Ayo, how? Very bad for your heart pressure. Very bad for heart pressure. Unless you are those, ayo, you have to learn from it. Okay, can we do it one time? Ayo, ayo. So if you don't have that ayo, ayo mentality, don't talk about disruptions. Understand? Now, Pony has rightfully said that over our nearly 20 years of operations, one of the most important things that he has learned is that in every crisis, there could be in every single crisis, no matter how big or small, it could potentially be a fatal incident to a company's survival. A company that seems to be too strong to be disrupted will be those that would die even faster. That company will lose all sort of a disadvantage as a single step slower in following a mega trend. And this is classic. Pony say, you know what? When a giant falls dead on the ground, his body is still warm. When a giant falls, his body is still warm. Talking about disruptions. Now, perhaps it is this perpetuate sense of urgency and habitual scrutiny to even any possible eventualities that actually help Tencent from falling into such deadly circumstances. The key challenge, I suppose, is really to put a mechanism in place so that we know whether it was a real invasion or it could just be a false alarm. And that brings me to the second observations about our leadership. And I like to call that this is a bunch of people that genuinely live and breathe a data-driven management culture. You know, in Tencent, we have a best-in-class, highly sophisticated management information infrastructure that rivals the best practices in the world. Every single minute, from my BlackBerry, no, just kidding. From my mobile phone, I can know exactly what is the viewership, what is the everything, far more than just P&L of any of the products that I have for the whole company. And we are talking about $500 billion US dollars worth of data in here. And more importantly, by having something there is one thing, but this leadership, data-driven kind of a culture, you have Pony Ma, you have Martin, you have everybody one that actually uses WeChat, cut and paste. WeChat was kind of I like to think that it was perhaps initially developed for this purpose, you know, to check on everything. All our frontline managers are increasingly to be so data-driven that they have to answer all these questions within seconds. Otherwise, you'll be seen that you're left behind. Because when there's a group called video group, there's a group called social media group, there are hundreds of groups whereby it's easy to throw questions. And you see, you have like 40 people, 50 people within that group. They were so quick in providing numbers. So that kind of a culture, that's what we're facing today. A comprehensive data set accumulated over the decades, all captured from our very own playing field, and these are not the numbers from McKinsey, these are our very own data sets, and upgraded over the years through machine learning, from artificial intelligence, and whatnot. So they therefore form a remarkable competitive advantage for us engaging the shape of any potential disruptions. And finally, what I have observed, the third point, is what we call a hands-on work ethics. It's very difficult to work in companies such as Tencent because when your chairman is not a chairman that enjoys just going around making speeches, he kind of delegated that easy task to me. So his task is to look at all the products. Hey, SY, why is it like that? Hey, why is this like that? And And he is the number one product manager of the company, despite the fact that he's the richest man in China today. And he's number one product manager for the company. Start from the leadership. And looked, the reason for that for him to do that is because he enjoyed discovering bugs, designing bugs from our product. And I remember in the early days of our WeChat development, we had only 2 to 3 months of windows of opportunity if we wanted to engage the marketplace. So during that 2 to 3 months, from 0 to 1 is always very difficult. And we had the entire top management teams of Tencent spending 24/7, day in, day out. Sometimes we even ship 2 or 3 versions of products out in a single day, just to find bugs, just to make sure that the energies that spent on the product and making assessments of the so-called the needs of the users. And another example that I can think about is a lot of people also know that this company spent a lot of time on merger and acquisition. And you think that we grew by merger and acquisition? It's not that simple, because when you go in to deal with merger and acquisition, that person has a choice. Would they then partner with you, partner with somebody else? And this is again Martin, our group president. One of the merger case was Tencent's buying Supercell, a Finnish company, $8.6 billion US. And how did we close the deal? Because Martin then became a great player of Clash Royale, and he was so good, he ranked number 97 in the global playing list. So when he came over to Finland, he was playing Clash Royale with the chairman and also with the best player from that company, and he won. So then this company know that, oh my goodness me, we are just a rich, big company from China that is cash rich, but we share your vision. We wanted to create values for our users, whether it was in games, in video, media, sports, and etc. So I guess that was Martin's way of doing the due diligence for himself. Now, to sum up the answers for this part of the presentation, an inherent sense of insecurity, a data-driven management culture coupled with a hands-on work ethics at work. And such qualities, I like to believe, that has actually equipped the Tencent leadership team in tackling any potential crisis moving forward in a better manner. Now, the second fundamental question that I thought we should share with you today is simply this. How do you know if you have identified the right disruption moments? How do you know whether the cocktail solution that you put together, it was the right optimum manner? And again, you don't. Now we can move on to that question. Well, obviously you don't, but however, unless you change or we change our mindset in looking at what disruption was about, our learning has been simply this. Confronting disruptions has to do, and it has nothing to do with whether we are more hardworking, we think more about the solutions. It has to be dealt with in a more unconventional manner. And incremental effort simply wasn't good enough. Now, a case in point, I was talking about one of the most strategically correct decisions that I have helped the company with my team together when we were faced with the 3 times hostile potential takeover of our video company. As I say, it was, the chairman was right, because how can we, when is going to be the exit point? You cannot keep burning 20 billion every year for that video business. Now, at that time, my team and I, we had a very strong conviction that the real values of online video lies in that fundamental potential network effect, which is very powerful when it begins to arrive at that flywheel point when it builds influence on memberships, on advertising, and eventually to e-commerce and etc. And such argument when Tencent became the first company in China to partner with NBA, there was the same argument. I spoke with David Shoemaker and with the commissioner from the US, because we have that flywheel effect. Now, having a vision is one thing, but having the ability, the stamina, and the so-called the commitment to really demonstrate that your vision is not just on PowerPoint. And our learning has been this. We had to make sure that every one of us within the team must understand that this was a do or die situation. And when approaching such life and death disruptive scenario, I remember the kind of pressure that we created for ourselves. So we asked ourselves, whatever things that we are putting forward for the board to consider, was it a all-in mindset in our countermeasures? Was it an all-in? Was it a proposition that we are betting our reputations, our career onto this single thing? Online media, I remember a meeting was called by the chairman, the president, the CSO, the CFO in Hong Kong. The third time, we all flew in. I flew in with my vice president, my content lady. The content lady was crying in the boardroom already. So he said, look, seriously, SY, it doesn't make sense. But we came up with a plan. I remember after that meeting, lasted until midnight. We managed to secure one extra award. We only needed 6 months. And the following morning, I wrote a long email to my chairman. And obviously, there was a lot of building blocks to this master strategy, which I don't want to go into details. But I will just share this point, which you understand. You see, when I look at the situation that we're facing, online media group then, we had 5,000 people, about 5,000 people in the entire organization. And you were trying to convince the board that this was important. But then when you look at the numbers, we only had less than 10% of individuals that was involved in online video business, in creating values for our users. So what does it tell you? You're not committed. You're not willing to do the heavy weight lifting stuff. So what my team and I, what we did, one of the strategy was within 3 months, we created a job descriptions for the entire value creation chain. We understood all the details of how do you do a killer product, how do you do a massive blockbuster product. Within 3 months, we moved 10% to 30% out of 5,000 people by not just moving people, but creating new job description, by inventing new job processes, by this and that. And all those things were done within 3 months. Mind you, it wasn't just about moving people from departments to departments. It was moving people from city to city. So this is the all-in mindset. I wasn't functioning as the president of Online Media Group. I was a field marshal because I told my people, this is it. If we don't win this, it's Waterloo. It's going to be no more OMG in the company. So I think that's we all-in mindset, and we acted accordingly. And this certainly wasn't a drill. Now, so that mindset was put in place, all for one and one for all, and all that. Now, secondly, it was also very, very fundamentally important to remember that when combating disruptions, whether that countermeasures was embedded with a series of nimble initiatives. And what I've learned from my previous life, and also when I'm speaking to various clients, is that people believe in watertight solutions. But I guess by now, Dan and our so-called our communication strategic partners are also getting very nimble in their steps. It's actually very, very much a Tencent philosophy to launch a product first and then make subsequent improvements according to user feedbacks. This is in China, we call this 互联网运营, which is the operations of internet. And such philosophy is beginning to pick up in their momentums, and many traditional companies such as Coca-Cola are trying to learn from such a way of making things as well. So that mantras of making it work, making it right, and then making it fast was actually very, very crucial for our survival. As I say, sometimes we actually ship out multiple versions even within a day. And finally, I think we like to believe that one of the most important criteria of all, but you have to genuinely have a strong conviction whether this solution was going to produce a strong unrivaled, compelling proposition. This is nothing new because it sounds like a no-brainer, but the real challenge really depends on if there exists already an internal culture in favor of incubation of killer products. Tencent, one of the things that some of us out there might know, since our inception, we actually openly encourage internal competition in order to cultivate the best product solution. Now, WeChat, people think that it's great today, but then not many people realize that when WeChat was developed against the highly intense disruptions moments of that micro Weibo social media disruption scenario, we actually had 3 different armies, 3 different battalions, one from Guangzhou, one from Chengdu, and one from Shenzhen, that actually work on WeChat products. So it wasn't like, sometimes when you're about to live or die, you don't look at face, despite the fact that people think that Chinese companies talk about face. No, when you're a survivor. So we needed the best of the best. So there was a strong internal competition came out. And at the end of the day, Alan Chang and his team from Guangzhou won just by 1 month. Today, we still drink and laugh about it because the team from Chengdu will always say that, you know what, Alan, we were just 1 month behind your step. 1 month in the world of internet could be eternity. So after that successful WeChat launching formula, Tencent actually formed a more mature internal competitive guidelines to incentivize innovative ideas in order to stay ahead of that constant challenge. Now, finally, I want to quickly just talk about how do you build a disruptive proof leadership culture moving forward. And to be very honest, I think we are 19, 20 years old. We are very young, and we are still learning. So if I could just borrow a framework from a strategic framework, if you like, to summarize our learning, and I'm going to borrow it from one of the emperors from China. That emperor is Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang from many centuries back. Emperor Chu has said that while leading the transformation of a state, it was crucial for the state officials. State official means all the C levels, the CCC, to remember that these are the 3 key advice. And we call it Gao Zhu Qiang, the very first point, strengthen our fortification. Now, what's your fortifications for the context of a company in commercial sense? Is fortification, it means it's walls, it's ultimate defense, and lies in the very core competitive advantage. You know about this, but then what our story was is, if you have a company that large, how do you define in one single word about competitive advantage? I just shared with you. We only focus on content and connector. Anything that has got to do with content, in any types of business that we're in, whether it was games or social, sports, e-commerce, then we have to be in there. Anything that connects. So these are the 2 things that if anything that comes into encroaching into that factor, that wall has to be so high. So I think that today we only focus on these 2 things because they are what we have to be consistently good at. Now, once you have that fortification, your defense against disruptions, the chances of success is higher. And the next thing you have to do is we probably have to work diligently to enhance and strengthen it. And which then brings us to the next step, what we call store more provisions. Wang Ji Liang. Now, the classic book about art of war, there's a saying that soldiers and horses do not march before the provisions are transported. And same thing in English idiom. An army marches on its stomach. And in this instance, in the context of Tencent, I think we are referring to 2 key things, the talents that we have and also the capital that we have. And when you're that large, capital was important. How do you make sure that you have enough funding, you have enough wisdom to make sure that you invest, merger acquisitions and all that. Now, for example, in respect to talent, we know that AI, artificial intelligence, was going to be very important for us in the future. And we need AI talents. And where are the best AI talents from the world? US is one, Russia is another. So how do you invite these people to come over? So what Pony did was we set up an AI lab next to Microsoft. because many Microsoft employees don't want to leave Seattle to come to China, so we just probably set up a campus closer to them. And that was a way that we attract talents, so we have to go through that kind of micro step to attract talents. Now, another good example with regards to storing the provision would be, if we were to look at the top management team in Tencent, I joined the company about 13, 12 years ago, and today, 10 or 12 of us, all of us were still there. So there's a high stability of top leadership, and we all have differences in our nationalities. We are like the Avengers, except we get a bit too old for that. Yeah. We almost like a small United Nations. We really work together. We see each other every day, every 2 weeks in the chairman's office. And we work so closely together. Now, finally, the last thing we have learned from Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang was this thing, what he called Huan Chen Wang, delay the proclamations of a kingship. That means don't rush to proclaim that you are the leaders, you are number one and all that. It's not just simply about releasing a press release, but it's really about mindset. We have gone through a time whereby we kind of let that thing into our head, and then subsequently we suffer. But the true success is not about setting yourself up to the throne, rather in enabling others to build a win-win relationship with you. When you're in the world of internet, today, internet, those days, I'm always amazed when people talk about internet as being actually the oil of the future. But whoever that discovered oil as the fundamental fuel or driver for industrialization over the past 400 years, whoever that invented or discovered electricity as a fundamental source of factors of productions for industrialization. But you don't see electrical company, oil company becoming like internet company today, right? So this is exactly what we have learned from our 3Q conflicts. And we had to meet with hundreds of specialists from various types of industry, not just from the world of internet, from various types of industry, because people talk about Internet Plus today. People talk about Internet of Things. The concept of Internet of Things is exactly taking place today in China. And we cannot be the king of everything because we needed the hospitals to function much better. We have to enable the hospital to make doctors better. We needed the railway stations, the railway tracks to function better. We needed the public bureaus of security to work better to secure social stability in the country. So how do we make sure that we use our high technology in enabling all these, which people are looking at the companies of technology in that way? So then we cannot say that we are that tall. You have to come down. You have to help everybody to be successful. Internet companies shall never claim the throne, and that would be bad. And which is why this was what we call the open platform strategy. And Tencent would continue to grow and flourish together with all our partners away from internet into traditional things, medicines, pharmaceuticals, financials, etc., and etc. And hopefully that would keep China more well-developed. There's a lot of issues in China, and internet connecting towards civil humanity, civilization of the future, where China is actually part of the world, and we hope we can actually help dance with disruptions better, and by helping China grow into a larger, responsible maturity industry player in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I've taken too much of your time. With that, I thank you.